Adabrana, Adabrana, Shalom ba, Lemana chai v'deyai, Lemana chai v'deyai, Adabrana, Adabrana, Shalom ba, Lemana bil Hashem Elokeinu, Havak Shadov la, Lemana bil Hashem Elokeinu, Havak Shadov la. Da 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 da. La 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 because of my brothers and friends, because of my sisters and friends, please let me ask, please let me sing peace to you. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. This is the house of the Lord. I wish the best for you. This is the house of the Lord. I wish the best for you. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 This song is dedicated to my second daughter, Mahada, my pride, Nidara. Da-dee-da-da, 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 da-dee-da. Da-dee-dee-da, da-dee-da-da, da-dee. Is not may overcome me, overcome me. When she big days, if I me, say if I is not may overcome me, overcome me. If she big day, say God me, say God me. I know many shine, my days are me. May call forever now, I'm shaking, oh Lord. He's not may overcome me, overcome me. If she big lazy father me, say father me. He's not may overcome me, overcome me. If she big days, if I me, say father me.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. What is going on with that? Always problems with these weird backgrounds. Okay, I don't know why that's doing that. Okay, all right, here we go. Any rate, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. I am Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and today we're going to be starting Leviticus chapter 19. We're going to talk about something called the Holiness Code. Maybe it's because there's not enough light in here. I don't know. I think that's what's going on. All right, hold on a second. Get some more light going in here. Oh. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. Let's do this. Okay. That's hopefully it's gonna be better. There we go. Okay. Yes, I'm back. This is why I need a video and sound engineer. Okay, I think it's a little bit better. So we're going to be starting in Leviticus chapter 19 this week, and we're going to talk about something called the Holiness Code. The Holiness Code is what the secular biblical scholars call Leviticus chapter 17 through 26. I think it's important that you guys know what that means, because you might hear it if you listen to lectures on various platforms. If you listen to lectures about Old Testament / Tanakh, Bible, whatever they call it, biblical archaeology even, it might mention this concept called the Holiness Code. So I think it's important that you guys at least are familiar with it. And no, God, I hate this background thing. I got to do something about this. This is ridiculous. Maybe I should just get rid of the stupid background. God almighty, it's really annoying. Hold on a second. Let's see if we can do this. Virtual background. How about just blur? Is that a little bit better? It's weird. All right, we'll stick with that. Whatever, that's weird too. Okay, but these weird virtual backgrounds are driving me nuts. How about this one? Maybe this can do it a little bit better. All right, we'll try that one. Okay. Right. So it's important that you guys at least know this concept called the Holiness Code, in my opinion. And we'll talk about that a little bit. No, I can't stand this background. Hold on a second. Let's try it one more time. All right. I'm just going back to the other one. Whatever it is, it is. Virtual background. Boom. The end. Okay. And I'm here and broadcasting today from Katsuni Heights. And I've moved here. And again, before I am officially ready to declare the first World Alliance of Qara'im, in-person actual community, I will say that anyone at this point who wants to move to Katsrin in the Golan Heights, we're about 10 or 15 miles from the northern border with Israel. So I'm not going to lie to you. There is some military activity. Lately, luckily for the past 2 or 3 weeks or so, there hasn't been much of anything. You do hear the fighter jets overhead frequently, especially in the morning, heading up into Lebanon to bomb Hezbollah. And for the past week and a half, 2 weeks or so, there haven't been any sirens here in Katsrin, but there have been sirens in the past. There have been sirens 3 times since I've been here. And 2 of those times, the Iron Dome, the Kipat Barzel system, was able to shoot all of the missiles down, at least in the Katsrin area. And so there was no damage, there were no injuries. And then one time, missiles did land in Katsrin, in the city of Katsrin, I think in about 3 different places, including one that was about a 5-minute walk from where I'm living, from my house, and basically destroyed 2 houses. Luckily, there was only 1 injury, and it was not a serious injury. Katsrin. I'm gonna write it down. It's in the Golan Heights. Katsrin. There we go. Okay. And there was 1 injury. Luckily, it wasn't a serious one. A couple of houses were destroyed. Another building was destroyed. I don't know what all the damage was, but yeah, there was some damage. So I ain't gonna lie to you guys. You are, if you do come here to live, you are going to be living in an active war zone that could be quiet for a while and could flare up at different times. But you know what? YaHWeH Ishmor. Let YaHWeH protect us. YaHWeH will protect us, I believe. And whatever is meant to be is meant to be. Whatever is meant to happen is meant to happen. And I truly believe, I think one of the thoughts that brought me to Katsrin, there were a number of them, but one of them was the strong belief that that I need to do my little part to be here on the northern border, to do my little tiny part to help protect Israel in the north, and very specifically regarding the fact that we as Karaites, as Chozrei B'Tanach, and that's the new phrase and term I'm going to be using to describe our particular movement, which I think will distinguish us a little bit from the more traditional Karaites who seem to be stuck in the world of the Rabbinites a little bit too much. So Chozerei b'Tanach means those who have returned to the Tanakh. If you know Hebrew well, it's a play on the idea of, shouldn't really be Chozerei b'Tanach. Chozrim b'Tanach, it's a play on the words Chozrim b'Tshuva. We are Chozrim b'Tanach. I won't explain it now, but whoever understands Hebrew well will understand exactly what I'm trying to say. And as Chozrim b'Tanach, as Karaites, we are the only ones, as far as I know, except maybe a couple stragglers here and there, who are calling out to YaHWeH by name. And this is such an important. I can't stand this background. This is driving me absolutely nuts. I'm going to leave it. All right, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore it. And this is such an important concept in the Torah and the Tanakh, to call out to YaHWeH by name, not to call out to Hashem, and not to call out to God, and not to call out to G-D, and not to call out to Yud-K, Vav-K, and not to call out to Elohim and Adonai and Adokai and all of these other various nicknames and quasi names that rabbinical Jews and actually most secular Jews will call God, because this has been taken away from us for thousands of years, literally. The idea that we should and have to call out to the God of Israel by name. His name is YaHWeH. It is not Yehovah or Yehovah, for reasons that I've gone into in other places. That is a really, actually, silly mistake, which I won't get into now. But we are the only ones, as Chozrim b'Tshuva, as Chozrim b'Tanach, as Karaites, who have the ability to stand here at the northern border and call out to YaHWeH, the Elohim of Israel, the God of Israel by name, which is essential and key to getting his attention, to getting his protection, to winning his favor. And so I believe that we as Karaites have an important role to play here on to protect Israel from the north. Yes, I can do that. To protect Israel from the north. And that's one of the things that brought me to Katsarin. Besides that, it is just a beautiful, beautiful little city. And it's in my opinion, the most beautiful part of the current country of Israel. The land of Israel will eventually be expanded with the help of YaHWeH. But in the current country of Israel, in my personal opinion, the Golan Heights is the most beautiful part. It is one of the few places in Israel that has natural forests, not planted. It has mountains, rivers, streams, tons of underground or springs that come from underground and well up onto the surface of the earth. Hiking trails, quaint settlements, and very few Arabs live in, or should I say Muslim Arabs live in the Golan Heights. Most of the Arabs that live here, quote unquote Arabs, or as a very person I am very close to likes to say, the Arabized Levantines, most of them are Druze, and they are not antagonistic, at least not on the surface. Most of them are not antagonistic towards the state of Israel or towards the Jews. So they're basically, while there might be terrorist activities in the Jerusalem area, in Tel Aviv, it's almost unheard of in the Golan Heights. What is here, of course, is the war, that's the ongoing war with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. But you know what? You can be walking across the street in a small town in America and get run over by a bus, God forbid. So, when God wants to get you, not that he's out to get us, he is out to do, he will save way or another. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you want to be part of the first World Alliance of Qara'im live community, then come to Katsarin, move to Katsarin. I'm not making an official announcement yet because I feel like a couple of other things need to fall into place, but I'm pretty confident that this is where I'd like to start the first one up. And if you're a bit of an adventurer, if you're a bit of a chalutz, if you're a bit of a pioneer, and you can deal with some unknowns, then I would say come join us and let's build an actual Karaite, an actual Chozrim B'Tanach community here in Israel, because it's something that has lacked for so many years. The only active Karaite communities in the country are the Egyptian Karaite of the Egyptian Karaite variety, and I've spoken about some of the problems with the Egyptian Karaite version of Karaitism, over the that's that. We're going to start learning internet as usual. We're going to start learning. We're going to start learning Leviticus chapter 19 this week. So we'll dig right in without any further ado. We're going to dig right in. Okay, I can. Mariana McDonough is telling about the shorts. Yeah, if you go to the YouTube channel, so there are two YouTube channels. There are the World Alliance. There is the Karaite Insights YouTube channel. So this is being broadcast on the Karaite Insights YouTube channel. Karaite Insights was my original website and the original, organization that I called myself when I broke out on my own, shall we say. And then in 2010, I believe it was, when the World Alliance of Qara'im was formed, and it was not formed by me, it was formed by a very, very brilliant guy who I should really get back in contact with, who kind of, I don't know what he's up to these days, to be honest, but his name is Gershon Kiprisi. He came up with the idea in 2010 to form the World Alliance of Qara'im because he felt that the main Karaite organizations at the time, the main Karaite movements at the time, sub movements, whatever you want to call them, were not acting independently, and were not fostering independent thought, and were not fulfilling the true values of Karaism, which is, of course, the basic Karaite motto is search well in the scriptures and do not rely on my opinion, or do not rely on my knowledge. So so then there's another YouTube channel, which is the World Alliance of Qara'im YouTube channel, and you could look it up in the description here. The description I sent out to announce this study. And if you do, then if you go there, then lately I've been doing shorts, and I'll continue to do shorts. I haven't had time over the past couple of days, but I'll hopefully get back to it tomorrow. Just explaining what the World Alliance of Qara'im is, and it's going to go into, it'll go into a lot of different topics, about Karaism, about the World Alliance of Qara'im, etc. Okay. So that's that. All right, let's get to chapter 20. Okay, this thing's acting weird again. You know what? I think I'm going to switch internet providers for 1 second. Please give me a second. One second, please. Okay, I may go offline for a second or two, but if so, I'll be right back. Okay, hopefully this is going to be a little bit better. Let me know if it is. Internet is always a problem. But one of these days we'll get it all sorted out. Okay, so that's that. We're going to start digging into Leviticus chapter 19. So Leviticus chapter 19 is a variety of... What's going on here? Is this working okay? Maybe I need to switch back to the other one. It's a variety of laws. How's the internet now? Can somebody let me know, please? Is it a bit smoothed out? Any better? Somebody let me know, please. Is the internet better? All right. Well, I'll continue. Let me know if you can. So Leviticus 19 begins chapters. Seems to be okay now. Good. On or is a chapter that covers a variety of laws that have to do with morality, ethics, whatever you want to call it. And we should know about something called the Holiness Code. So let's go to Rabbi Wikipedia and just read through. There we go. And I'll just read through what it says here. Let me make this a bit bigger so you guys can see. So the Holiness Code is used in biblical criticism. What is biblical criticism? Biblical criticism is the idea which has made its way into mainstream secular biblical scholarship and sadly into even some non-secular. I know some people who are officially dati religious and also hold by, at least to some degree, the what's called the documentary hypothesis. So the Holiness Code is used in biblical criticism. And biblical criticism is the idea that the Torah was not written by one author, specifically by Moses, but that it was assembled from a bunch of different earlier books, each kind of competing with each other in many cases, into the book that we know, or the books that we know as the 5 books of Moses. And there are 4 main sources that are called the J source, the E source, the whatchamacallit, they don't call it Levitical source. What is it? The P source, the priestly source, and the Deuteronomical source. So I won't get into it now, but that's the idea. It's a secular. I hear one of my cats meowing. I may have to check on them in a second. So it's a secular. Hold on a second. I better check. I hear some meows going on. I'll be right back. Sorry. What's going on? All right, false alarm. It was not one of my cats. It was a neighbor's cat or something. So, at any rate, so there's this idea that the 5 books of Moses is composed of earlier secular works that were put together by scribes in, well, there are different theories as to when, but maybe in the most common theory is in the times of Ezra and Nehemiah. We don't need to go into all of that, but let's read about the Holiness Code and why it's relevant to this, okay? So the Holiness Code is used in biblical criticism to refer to Leviticus chapters 17 through 26, and sometimes passages in other books of the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch means the 5 books of Moses, especially Numbers and Exodus. It is so called due to its highly repeated use of the word holy, which actually I don't think appears even once in Leviticus 19. I may be wrong, but it does appear throughout these chapters. Okay, be holy because I am holy. So it's called the Holiness Code. Kadosh is usually translated as holy, but originally meant set apart, with special, clean, pure, whole, and perfect as associated meanings. Okay, the term Holiness Code was first coined as some German word, which I ain't gonna read, literally holiness law. The word code, therefore, means criminal law. By German theologian, whatever, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. Critical biblical scholars have regarded it as a distinct unit and have noted that the style is noticeably different from the main body of Leviticus. Unlike the remainder of Leviticus, the many laws of the Holiness Code are expressed very closely packed together and very briefly. Okay, and we saw that starting in, again, so the Holiness Code starts in Leviticus chapter 17. Okay, what was in Leviticus chapter 17? So this had to do with the eating of blood being forbidden. So I guess there are different chapters. I don't know why they started in 17. I thought I'd already always heard 18. But let's read on. According to most versions of the documentary hypothesis, that's what I mentioned. Is this? Well, there it is. Okay, is this secular idea that the five books of Moses was written by basically four different authors or four different sources. The Holiness Code represents an earlier text that was edited and incorporated into the priestly source, the P source, and the Torah as a whole, although some scholars, such as Israel Knoll, whoever the heck that is, I'm sure he'll be forgotten very soon, believe the Holiness Code to be a later addition to the priestly source. The source is often abbreviated as H, so it's subsumed into the P source. So the idea is that there are, again, the idea of the documentary hypothesis is that there are four sources: the E, the J, the P, and the D. The P is the priestly source, which is it's I think all of the book of Leviticus, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe some other places as well. And H, this holiness code, Leviticus 17 through 26, is incorporated, is subsumed into the P source. So there are four main sources which make up the documentary hypothesis, or that are spoken about in the documentary hypothesis, and the H source is part of the P source, either having come earlier than or later than the rest of the P source. And again, I don't believe any of this stuff, but I just want you to know about this, because when you hear it, when you hear something called the Holiness Code, if you listen to lectures on from secular biblical scholars, you'll hear this all the time, and so you should know what it is. Okay, a date generally accepted by the proponents of the four-source hypothesis is sometime in the 7th century BC, when it presumably originated among the priests in the temple in Jerusalem. Okay, the Holiness Code also uses a noticeably different choice of vocabulary, repeating phrases such as "I, YaHWeH, am holy, I am YaHWeH, and I am YaHWeH, who makes you holy." We saw this, right? I am YaHWeH. We saw that a lot. Okay, reminding everyone who's reading it and listening to it exactly who's speaking. Okay, an unusually large number of times that we did see in Leviticus 18. Additionally, Leviticus 17 begins with, "This is the thing that Yahweh has commanded, saying." Let's see. Okay, this is what the Lord has commanded. And Leviticus 26 strongly resembles the conclusion of a law code, despite the presence of further laws afterwards, such as Leviticus 27, giving the Holiness Code appearance of a single distinct unit. So Leviticus 26, which we'll get to, is the curses, the blessings and the curses. Pretty intense. We'll get to that. And so that sounds like the conclusion of a code of law. Professor Christine Hayes, who is one of my favorite secular biblical scholars. She is brilliant. She's brilliant. She's a professor of whatever religion or something like that, or Old Testament. I can't remember what official title is, at Yale University. And she is brilliant. I mean, look her up on YouTube, especially her series on the Old Testament. She's absolutely brilliant. And she's done a lot of other stuff as well. Discusses the difference between the Holiness Code and the rest of Leviticus. In the Holiness Code, Israel itself is regarded as holy, not just the priestly class. And I guess I'll end after this. This theme and the exhortation, "You shall be holy, for I, YaHWeH, your God, am holy," they find their fullest expression in the block of text, Leviticus 17 through 26, that's referred to as the Holiness Code. There's an important difference between Leviticus 1 through 16 and the Holiness Code. According to Leviticus 1 through 16, Israel's priests are designated as holy, a holy class within Israel, singled out, dedicated to the service of God, and demarcated by rules that apply only to them. Israelites may aspire to holiness, but it's not assumed. However, in the Holiness Code, we have texts that come closer to the idea that Israel itself is holy by virtue of the fact that God has set Israel apart from the nations to himself, to belong to him, just as he set apart the seventh day to himself to belong with him. Okay. Initially, the Holiness Code was considered part of the priestly source by some. We read this already. Blah 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 blah. Some such as editings. Okay. However, other scholars generally believed it to have been originally separate legal code referred to as H, which the priestly source edited and chose to embed into their writing afterwards. Some such editing is simply the addition of phrases such as, and YaHWeH spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, designed to put the code in the context of the remainder of a code being given by God, as is the case for the remainder of Leviticus. By 1955, scholars agreed that the Holiness Code consisted of at least Leviticus 17 to 26, but some 20 passages outside of it were also identified as H, including Leviticus 11, which deals with kashrut, kosher and unkosher animals, and 25 to 40 being contested, doesn't matter. Numbers, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I think that's all that we need to say here. We could go on, but I think we get the idea. Okay. Maybe we'll just sum up by reading the last paragraph here. The Holiness Code is believed to have been written as a form to avoid sexual deviations, sexually transmittable diseases, and other forms of physical illness for the people of Israel, with some specified as applicable before proselytes. Some of its teachings are still in practice in the evangelical church. However, see Leviticus 18 and Biblical Law and Christianity for details. Among mainline Protestants, okay, doesn't matter. This is not relevant to us. Okay, so that's that. That is the Holiness Code. If you hear the concept Holiness Code, then you now know what it is. Leviticus chapter 17 through 26. And we are in the midst of the Holiness Code, therefore, in Leviticus chapter 19. And with that being said, gotta plug in soon. Let's dig in. I study these things so Paul says, I study these things when I received my Master's Divinity at a Christian seminary. Do any of the Karaite sages talk about this? Talk about what specifically, Paul? I'm not sure what you're saying exactly. Talk about the documentary hypothesis. If that's what you're talking about, then no, not really. And I'll point out that I certainly don't believe in that is true. I'm just mentioning it because you will hear it thrown around a lot. Okay, so that's the Holiness Code. We're now going to dig into Leviticus chapter 19. And we're already sharing the screen. Let me switch over to the Hebrew. Let's open our Robert Alter, which we use. Where did I stick him? There he goes. Again. And that'll keep us busy for a while. And let me just turn on the AC. It's a bit cold in here. Just 1 second, please. One second. Oh, should be better. And let me grab some water. For now. Okay, so let's dig into Leviticus chapter 19. And let me bring it up here as well. Seven, 97. Okay. So chapter 19 is going to start off, and this is the reason I brought up the concept of the Holiness Code here. So, okay, we'll read that commentary when we get to it. All right, so we're in Leviticus 19, and let's pay attention. Yeah, it's very possible, Paul. Like I said, I don't hold by that idea whatsoever. I'm just letting people know what's out there. Okay. I believe that, well, I'll tell you what I believe. I should mention what I believe regarding the 5 books of Moses, that either it was dictated word for word by YaHWeH to Moses, or possibly that it was assembled later on, taking the prophecies and the sayings of Moses and then assembling it into a proper book. I'm open to that idea as well, but not that it comes from different sources, that were assembled into a single unit. I think there might be some evidence, such as anachronisms that we see in the Torah. The Torah will mention things that already existed in the land of Israel, such as towns that didn't exist in the time that the Israelites were wandering in the desert. So it is possible that, like many of the books in the Torah, in the Tanakh, that the prophecies of Moses, the sayings of Moses, the ideas of Moses, the laws that Moses gave were all taken by later scribes. At what time? I don't know. Probably not too much later. And assembled into a proper book, maybe soon after his death, maybe by Joshua or the scribes of Joshua. That I'm open to that idea. Or I guess the more religious view would be that every word of the Torah from beginning to end was dictated to Moses by God, or it was a collaboration between Moses and God. Either one of those, I don't think in any way rejects or counteracts or counters the idea that the book is divine, because even if it were put together, by later scribes, by slightly later scribes, it's still taking all the prophecies and the laws that Moses gave Israel and assembling them together, which for sure is when it says, "Wayomer YaHWeH el Moshe lemor," when YaHWeH spoke to Moses and said, then that is direct quotes, or at least paraphrases of what YaHWeH said to Moses. So it either is completely divine, every single word of it from beginning to end, or it's a book that incorporates divine prophecies given to Moses. Okay, let's go on. So Leviticus chapter 19. We're starting in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 1. Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by Karaite sages. So the Holiness Code really comes only as part. This is to answer Paul's question: is the Holiness Code is a Christian theology concept? What do the Karaite sages say about any of that? Well, this entire documentary hypothesis is only from the 1800s, and Karaism stretches back already to what, the 700s? I guess you can date it to. So another 1,100 years before the documentary hypothesis became popularized, and so therefore most Karaite sages in the history of Karaism have absolutely nothing to say about it whatsoever, because the theory didn't exist for most of the time that Karaism has been a movement. If you're asking me what the Karaite sages say about it, since its popularization, I think in the I don't remember exactly when, the 1850s, give or take. I mean, I can't speak for every single Karaite sage that has lived since then, but I would imagine, and I do believe, that almost all of them would reject it. And as do I. I'm just mentioning it again so that you know what it is if you hear the concept being thrown around. Okay, let's go into Leviticus chapter 19. YaHWeH el Moshe lemor. YaHWeH spoke to Moses saying, holy cow, I got to plug in. Why is this? I know because the brightness is so high. That's what it is. I'll plug it in a minute. Let me see if I can make the brightness less. Jeez. Okay. Daber. Daber el kol adat b'nei Israel. Speak to the entire. They usually translate this as congregation, or how do they translate it here? Congregation. That's a poor translation. Adat really comes from the underlying word ed, which means a witness. So these are literally the true Jehovah's Witnesses. This is the witnesses, the witnessing community, I sometimes like to translate it as. So Daber el kol adat b'nei Israel, speak to the entire witnessing community of the children of Israel, all the true Jehovah's Witnesses, or YaHWeH's witnesses. And what does that mean to be a witness in community? It means a community that has witnessed God face to face, that are witnesses for God's existence, for His greatness, and are by keeping His laws, are witnesses on this earth that He exists, that He gives laws, that He has set up a model community, which of course we didn't always fulfill. But in theory. So that's the idea of being a witnessing community, of being the witnesses, of being the true Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay. So Israel, the children of Israel, Bnei Israel, children of Israel, we are the true Jehovah's Witnesses, not the guys that go around and knock on the doors. Okay, so Dober el kol adat Bnei Israel. So I'll translate that as the witnessing community of the children of Israel. V'mata aleim, say to them, and here we go, Holiness Code, right? Kidoshim tihiyu, be holy, ki kadosh. Kadosh ani, because I am holy. Ki kadosh ani, YaHWeH Elohechem, because I, YaHWeH, your God, am holy. Okay, and here Robert Alter has a comment. Let's check out his comment. Plug in a second. Okay, so although the idea that the people of Israel is to make itself holy by emulating God's intrinsic holiness, and it was, I think, Rabbi Wikipedia that pointed out that the true underlying root of holy in Hebrew is kadosh. The underlying root is kadash, is kuf daled shin, and that means set aside. So for instance, the mikdash is generally translated as the sanctuary. The mikdash often refers to the area inside the tent of meeting or inside the temple, and it's the set aside area. Why is it set aside? Because only kohanim can enter into it. So kadosh really means set aside, right? Just as you would take, I don't know, let's say you have a whole bunch of, plates, and then you have these really special plates that you got from your great grandmother, and you're going to set them aside and you're going to put them in a special cabinet under lock and key so that they don't get destroyed. Okay, they don't get messed with, tampered with. So that's the idea. That is the idea of kadosh, of holy, of being set aside, which reminds me of a funny story. I once had a friend back in Yerushalayim many years ago who his job was a mover. He would, pack houses up, move all the contents to a new place. He was a mover. You know what a mover is? He had a moving truck and all of this kind of stuff. And I asked him, what was your worst experience moving? What was your most ignominious, your most ignoble experience as a mover? And he said that he was packing up. He was moving some family's stuff from one house to another, and he took the Passover dishes that belonged to their great grandmother. And as he was walking down the stairs, he dropped the box with the Passover dishes, and they went all tumbling down the stairs and shattered into a million pieces. Well, that was that. I never forgot that story. I don't know if I felt more sorry for the family that happened to, or felt more sorry for him. But that's the idea. If you have something special like that, you set it apart. Okay, you take it and you put it in a special place. It's separated. It's set apart from the rest of the stuff, which is chol, which is just what would be called profane, not profane in the modern meaning of the word, which means profanity, right? Which means smut kind of stuff. But profane meaning just average uh, day to day uh, things that have to do with day to day life. So an example would be that the 6 days of the week, Sunday through Friday, are profane. They're just average days. They're not smutty unless you're doing smutty things. But then Shabbat, Saturday, Friday night through Saturday night, is kadosh. It's set aside. It's a special day. It's blocked off and demarcated from the rest of the 6 days of the week. So Israel is a nation, just like every other nation. We're all human beings, all of us, every single person, and I'm saying this because I heard where did I hear it this week? Oh, right. Yeah, there was there was a debate. I like to listen to, oh boy, I really got to plug in. I'll do it in a second. I like to listen to Piers Morgan on YouTube. So there's a debate this week. I mean, he's not as pro-Israel as I would like him to be, but he's pretty fair overall. And there was a debate this week between Rabbi Shmuley Boteach and Candace Owens, and boy, that was a real barn burner. Definitely some fireworks there, which I think Piers Morgan does on purpose. He tries to bring people in that he knows are gonna really create a ruckus, and they certainly did. And I think that Candace Owens said to Rabbi Shmuley, America's rabbi, for some strange reason, that she said that Rabbi Shmuley was a follower of the former Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who died in the early 1990s. And then she quoted some of Menachem Mendel Schneerson's writings, basically saying that the Goyim, the non-Jews, are animals, and they're basically a different species. And she brought that up right into his face, and blah, blah, blah. Fireworks ensued, etc. But the point is that I think that is something that grew out of rabbinical Judaism. And I think it's a disgusting idea. It's a disgusting attitude that somehow that Jews are a different species, that Israel's a different species, or that the Goyim are basically animals and the only true human beings on planet Earth are the Jews. I used to hear this thrown around all the time when I learned in rabbinical yeshivas. It's kind of almost, I would say, part of rabbinical Judaism, or has become part of rabbinical Judaism. Not completely. There's some people who don't cling to that idea, but I've heard it more often than not. And I reject that. That's disgusting, in my opinion. All human beings are created in the image of God. Adam and Eve were not Jews. They were not Israelites. They were human beings, and they were created in the image of God. All human beings are created in the image of God, and have the potential to what would be the word in English, to side more with their animalistic side, since our bodies are animalistic bodies, or with their godly side, since our souls come from the spiritual world, the world of spirits. Our bodies come from the physical world of dust and matter. Any rate, so but the point is, so where does Israel fit into this? So Israel is a nation, just as all of the other nations, the Chinese, the Japanese, the whatever, the Inuit, Eskimos, are all different nations. But Israel is kadosh. Israel is set aside, just like all 7 days of the week are days of the week. That's true. But the 6 days of the week, Sunday through Friday, are different from the Shabbat, from Saturday, that is set aside as a holy day. Okay? So that would be the perfect analogy. I really got to plug in. That would be the perfect analogy of the relationship between all of the nations, or the rest of the nations, and Israel. Yes, all of the nations are nations. All of the people of the nations are created in the image of God. But Israel, like the Shabbat, is set aside as a special, a demarcated nation. And in that sense, it is different, not a different species, but different. It is set aside as let's say, the china of the china meaning the silver, the dishes of the great grandmother from Shabbat would be set aside as something holy. So Israel set aside from the rest of the nations as a holy nation. Okay, I need to plug in, so I won't put on any music or anything like that. I'll just do what I have to do, and I'll be right back. We get the plug. Hold on a second, please. I'll just turn off the mic. All right, I'm back. I just had a plug in, and now I have to drink. Hold on a second, please. Ah, good vodka. No, I'm joking, it's just water. Okay, so that's that. We can keep that in mind. Let's go on. So you're going to be holy because I'm holy. You're set apart. You're set aside. You are sectioned off. You are quarantined because I'm set aside. I'm holy. Okay, I'm set apart. How is YaHWeH set apart? Well, first of all, he doesn't have any form. Okay, listen up, my former Christian friends. He doesn't have any physical form. He doesn't have a son who has a physical form. Well, I mean, we human beings are his sons and daughters, but you know what I mean. And he's set aside because he lives outside of the world of time and space. He doesn't share his malchut. He doesn't share his kingship with anyone. There's no other entity that can be compared to him. You know, he doesn't really need anything from us. Well, he does, but that's a different story, or else he wouldn't have created us. He needs our love and our respect. He wants our love and our respect. He's lonely without us. That's 100% for sure. But at the end of the day, you know, if he had to go it alone, he's not dependent on us for his own survival, right? So he's set aside. And so we are to be like him. We're to be set aside as a nation, the children of Israel, as he is set aside. Okay. So what does Robert Alter say? Is not unique to this group. I love text in Leviticus. Its enunciation as the supreme rationale and didactic rallying point for God's commands is distinctive, and it is what has led scholars to designate the textual unit from chapter 17 through chapter 26 as the Holiness Code. When the sundry injunctions here conclude with the reiterated formula, I am the Lord, the implication is, I am the Lord your God who is holy. Okay? All right, so what are these laws? Let's dig in. Any questions, any comments so far? Shabbat Shalom, R2D2, or whatever the hell your name is. Oh, which reminds me, I forgot to send out my that doesn't matter. Should I send it out right now? No, I'll do it later. Okay. Okay. Shabbat Shalom Itan Avior. Verse 3. Ish imo ve'aviu ki ra'u wa'et shabtotai tishmeru ani YaHWeH Elohechem. Each person must fear his mother and his father. And yes, the word there is fear. Okay? Just as we fear God, that's a word that's often used with what our relationship should be to YaHWeH. We should fear him. Why should we fear him? Because it's for our own good. And this is, I think, unfortunately, what a lot of people don't realize. To fear YaHWeH is for our own good. Because if we didn't fear him, then maybe we wouldn't do what he tells us to do. And then who suffers from that? We do. Okay, what would be the example? I think the best example I can give is when I think back on my school days in elementary school, junior high school, there were two types of teachers. Okay, there were the types of teachers who tried to be cool with the kids. Okay, tried to be one of the guys, one of the girls, and they were kind of lax usually on discipline, you know, and you know the type. You've all ran into them. It's very common against among parents these days to be like the cool parents, like that. Some even smoke pot with their kids. Okay, you know the thing, right? You know the thing. To quote our, is he still our president? Is that Biden guy? Is he still president? Did they get rid of him? I don't even know. Oh, I think he's still president, at least in name. Anywho, so you know the thing. So that was one type of teacher, and all the kids love that type of teacher, right? They're cool, they're cool with us, right? Then there was another type of teacher that they were real bastards. Okay, they were strict, and I'm not talking about being nasty or abusive. I'm not talking about that. God forbid. That was a third type of teacher. I had a couple of those too. Not too many, thank God. I had great teachers. But there was a second type of teachers is they were real bastards, they were real sticklers. They didn't try to be cool with the kids, didn't try to be down with the kids. They didn't speak the language of the kids. They kept a certain distance. And we as kids, we feared them. Okay? We didn't mess with them. And I'll tell you something. At the time, I could say that I definitely didn't appreciate those teachers as I did the cool ones. But years later, when I looked back on the various teachers I had at my schooling, I realized, or not even so many years later, maybe soon afterwards, I realized that the classes I learned the most in were from the teachers that kept a bit of a distance that I had a little bit of a fear of. It was a good thing for kids to have fear of their teachers because that's the only way that they could instill discipline in the class. Discipline is not good for the teachers, it's good for the students, it's good for us. It keeps us in line, and it allows us to not only grow, not only to learn what we were supposed to learn, but also to work on our character to be better people. So fear of authority figures, if they are good authority figures, if they have our best interests in their hearts and minds, is a good thing, not a bad thing. It's for our benefit. Okay, think of an army drill sergeant. Okay, who's going to be a real bastard. Okay, think of what was that movie? Whatchamacall? An Officer and a Gentleman. Great movie, right? Okay, who was it who played the drill sergeant again? I don't know. I can't remember. One of those black actors. I always get them. Oh, I shouldn't even say that, right? I should say get them all confused with each other. It wasn't the whatever, right? Whatever his name was, I can't remember. So he was a real bastard, right? But he was doing it to build soldiers. And why was he building soldiers? Because he was training them to save their own lives in times of battle and to save the lives of their fellow soldiers. Okay? Imagine if this drill sergeant was just being cool with the guys and that would be very lovely. They'd all think he's a really cool dude and all think they're all best friends and stuff. But when the battle came, then that might cost them their lives. Okay, so that's the difference. Fear of YaHWeH is a good thing. Okay, because he is training us. He has only 70 or 80 or 90 years to turn us into men and women. And so he has to work fast, because 70, 80, 90 years really ain't that much time when you get right down to it. And so he has to be a bit of a, I'm not going to say the word bastard referring to God, but you know what I mean. He's got to be a bit of a tough guy, and he has to instill fear in us, because that's the only way that he's going to be able to teach us the lessons that we need to learn in the short amount of time that we're on this earth. As I always say to a good friend of mine, Eliezer, we are alive for 70 or 80, 90 years, and we're dead for eternity. So we only have 70, 80, or 90 years to learn the lessons we need to learn that are meant to last us for eternity. So it is a good thing to fear God. And therefore, it is a good thing to fear one's mother and father, assuming, again, they're not abusive or something seriously wrong there. The Torah doesn't live in a vacuum, okay? It's giving general principles. Not speaking about every individual situation. There are obviously exceptions to every rule, and the Torah is well aware of that. God is well aware of that. He's not stupid. He doesn't live, he may live separate from us. He may be kadosh and set apart, but he's very well aware of the plight of the human beings that he's created. So at any rate, it is a good thing to fear our mothers and our fathers. And just think of households that did not have parents who were feared. Think of households that didn't have a father in the household, where there wasn't fear of a father. I remember teaching school. I've taught school in the United States, in New York, in Brooklyn, and I've taught school in Israel, in Jerusalem, and as a school teacher for about a year and a half in New York, and then also about a year and a half in Israel, in Jerusalem. And I didn't see it so much in Jerusalem because families are very much intact in Israel. But I remember seeing it back in New York, that you can almost instantly tell who the kids were who didn't have fathers in the home, because they just didn't have any discipline. They lacked discipline. They were lost. They were troubled. So fear is a good thing. Fear helps us when those that we are to fear are doing this for us, for our benefits. And parents and God certainly fall into that category. Okay, so ish imo ve'aviu tira'u ve'et shabbatai tishmeru, and keep my Shabbatot. Okay, Shabbat we said is a Yom Kadosh. It's a holy day. It's set aside from the rest of the days, just as Israel is set aside from the rest of the nations, just as YaHWeH himself is set aside from his creations. And then, of course, we have the Ani YaHWeH Elohechem, which Robert Alter pointed out appears a lot, and which Rabbi Wikipedia pointed out appears a lot in the Holiness Code in chapters 17 through 26. Okay. Another thing to say would be, let's quickly reference Exodus chapter 20, the 10 Commandments. And these are two of the 10 Commandments being rephrased here. The fourth commandment and the fifth commandment. Okay, let's take a look at that. Exodus chapter 20. So I'll just go to the English just to make it go faster. Okay, so the fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. There we see it's holy. It's set aside. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Shabbat, a Sabbath to YaHWeH your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, your son, your daughter, etc. Okay. Okay. For in 6 days YaHWeH made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore YaHWeH blessed the seventh day and made it holy. And then the fifth commandment, the fifth statement, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land that YaHWeH, your God, is giving you. And there are a couple of commandments where it says that if you do them, you will live long in the land. And they all generally, we could do a separate study on that if we ever have time, but they all generally are associated with doing something morally correct. Okay? So by honoring your father and your mother, there it says kaved. Look at the Hebrew. Kaved et avicha v'et imecha. So honor your father and your mother. Here it says fear your mother and your father. The rabbis go have a field day with that one, but we're not going to get into that. It's the same commandment, just phrased in a slightly different way. And so we see that what we have here in Leviticus 19 are two. In Leviticus 19:3 are two of the 10 commandments in the reverse order, by the way. So this is the fifth commandment. That's the fourth commandment. Okay. Let's see if Robert Alter has anything to say about that. So every man shall revere his mother and his father. And my Sabbaths you shall keep. So Robert Alter says, oh, geez. What did I just do there? Oh, geez. That's not what I meant to do. Oh, golly. 987. 1 second, please. Okay, so it has been recognized since late antiquity that this section of laws, beginning with this verse, constitutes a kind of paraphrase and elaboration of the 10 commandments, following a different order, using somewhat different turns of phrase, and introducing additional legal imperatives. Avram ibn Ezra, who is definitely Karaite leaning, a medieval commentator, Torah commentator, excellent Torah commentator, as usual, with an eye to compositional links, notes that the previous section was focused on prohibited sexual relations that could lead to the expulsion of people from its land. The variegated laws of the present chapter, he contends, came to remind Israel that there is a whole spectrum of commands which must be observed if it is to remain rooted in the land. Okay, interesting. Yeah, he's good, Ibn Ezra. All right. Any questions, any comments? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you, Marianana. You will see them again someday. Verse 4, Al tifnu el elilim wa Elohem asecha lo asu lachem ani YaHWeH Elohechem. So this is a paraphrase of the second commandment. A second. Here. Okay, so second commandment, Exodus 20 says, you shall not make for yourselves an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, YaHWeH, your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations for those who love me and keep my commandments. Okay? So that's not making any idols, not making any images, and it doesn't mean you're not allowed to make statues or paintings. So religious Orthodox Jews take this a bit too far, and Muslims take them even further. If you've ever been in a Muslim country, you know that they don't depict any humans or animals in their architecture and their artwork. I think they do permit plants, but it's a lot of these complicated geometric shapes are absolutely gorgeous. I've been in a number of Muslim nations, and I actually felt quite comfortable in them. They were not radical Muslim nations for the most part. The most time I spent was in Morocco. I've been to Morocco 5 times. And the architecture, the artwork is just absolutely beautiful there. It's all these intricate shapes because they also accepted this commandment for themselves. But again, they take it to the degree of not making any images whatsoever of humans or animals. Now, that's not really what the Torah means, and my proof is that when Solomon built his palace, that leading up to his throne were statues of lions. You could see this in the passages in the Tanakh that describe the building of his when he builds his palace. Okay, so clearly, it was not forbidden to make statues, images, etc. What is forbidden is to worship them as gods, to bow down before them. And this is the way the Torah often works. It will say something. I don't know what the technical scholarly concept is called. I forgot. But it'll say one thing and then it'll extend it with another thing. And really the prohibition is against the extension, not against the original thing. And this is unfortunately misunderstood by the rabbis for sure, and by a lot of people who are not really knowledgeable of biblical Hebrew. So what would be an example in English? It would say, I don't know, I'll make up some stupid example. Do not walk into a Walmart to buy any potato chips with artificial coloring in them, because or artificial flavoring in them, because if you eat artificial flavoring, you may break out in rashes or something like that. So what's the real prohibition there? The prohibition there is not to eat potato chips with artificial coloring in it. But the whole thing says don't walk into a Walmart to buy, what was my commandment again? Don't enter a Walmart to buy potato chips with artificial coloring in them, because artificial coloring may cause you to break out in hives. Because if you eat artificial coloring, it may cause you to break out in hives. So the real commandment is not to eat potato chips with artificial coloring in them, because you may break out in hives. But how is it phrased? It says, don't walk into a Walmart to buy potato chips with artificial coloring in them. So the commandment is really not against walking into a Walmart per se. It's walking into a Walmart in order to buy potato chips with artificial coloring in them. Okay. And by the way, the Walmart would be an example. It would just be, that's the way we humans work, right? It would be understood that you shouldn't also walk into I don't know what supermarkets around you guys, but when I was back in New York, don't walk into a Stop and Shop, or don't walk into a Wallbounds, or don't walk into a whatever, okay, ShopRite, to buy potato chips with artificial coloring in them, because artificial coloring will make you break out in hives. So the Walmart is just an example. It's a stand-in for a general, for any supermarket or any store that might sell potato chips that might sell this stuff, okay? And that's also very common in the Torah. The Torah will use examples as stand-ins for the general concept. And you have to get that from the context. You have to get that from knowledge of biblical Hebrew. But what's the real commandment in my example? The real commandment is not to walk into a Walmart. If you want to walk into a Walmart to use the bathroom, no problem, right? But the point is that it's saying that where you're going to find this, you'll find this, a classic example, or a prime example of where you would find these potato chips with the food coloring in them would be a Walmart. So that it starts out by saying don't walk into a Walmart. Okay. It's the same thing here. It says, let's read this now and let's understand it in that context of my beautiful commandment of the potato chips. Shalom, Johan Swart. If you call me Rabbi, Marianana Miknana is going to rip your jugular vein. If you call me Rabbi one more time, Marianana Miknana is going to rip your jugular vein out. So she does not want you calling me Rabbi. You guys work it out. Okay. So let's read the commandment again. Exodus 20, you shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them, or in order not to bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents, etc. So the real prohibition here is not to bow down to them or worship them. The introductory phrase, you shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below, is meant to introduce the idea that you should not do it for the sake of bowing down or worshiping them. But if you're just doing it for decoration, or in the case of King Solomon, if you're just doing it to adorn your palace, then as long as you're not treating them as gods, as long as you're not bowing down to them, then it's not a problem per se. It's not a problem ipso facto in and of itself. Okay? And this is, again, something I think that is often missed in the Torah. There is no prohibition here against making images of things that exist in the physical universe. The problem is bowing down to them, worshiping them as idols. So you might say, well, better not make it at all, because it might be tempting to bow down to them and worship them as idols. Well, I don't know. Life is dangerous. Just you can't restrict everything all the time, or else we're not doing anything. Anywho, any questions? Any comments? Oh, come on, Marianana McNana. It's just a joke. Jeez, I never know when you're gonna get offended. Okay, Johan, Marianana McNana is not going to rip your jugular vein out. Okay? Jeez. Okay. So verse 4 here says in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 4, Al tifnu el elilim Elohei masecha. Masecha are molten. Nesech or linsoch means to pour. So it literally means molten. They're often translated as molten images. That was one of the way idols were made, is that liquid metal. I guess during the Bronze Age it was bronze. I'm not a metallurgist, so I'm assuming it was bronze. Iron later was the Iron Age. So I don't know if you melt down iron to be able to pour it. I don't know, but at any rate, metals that are melted down and then poured into molds. As well, we won't get into that right now. Okay, but metals that are melted down and poured into molds, and then cool off, and then the mold is broken, because when they made it, they broke the mold, and that is a molten image. You'll often hear it translated as a molten image. That's specifically what it means. And there's another type, which is a pesel. The soul of pesel means to carve or to chisel. That's a chiseled image. So specifically here, there's a molten image. Lo ta'asu lechem ani YaHWeH Elohechem. So it's giving the example of a molten image. Obviously, that includes any type of creation of a physical entity that imitates the shape of something that is then used as an idol, that is then used to bow down and worship, bow down to and worship. Okay? Okay. And hopefully they translate it here. How do they translate masecha? Molded. Okay. Alrighty. Any comments here? Idols. So let me bring this over here. No, I'll leave this here. So all right, so Robert Alter says about the word Elilim, idols. The Hebrew Elilim refers to the carved likenesses or divinities, not to the carved likenesses of divinities, but to the non-entity of the pagan gods. Okay, so what he's saying is, I think it's self-explanatory, but Elilim are false gods. They're gods that other nations, and unfortunately sometimes the children of Israel, believed were real, but they're not real. Like, oh, I won't say it because then Marianana will just get pissed off at me again, but think of your various false gods. Okay, let's use I don't know, Shiva or Vishnu or something like that. They don't exist. They're a figment of the imagination. Excuse me. They're a figment of the imagination of the Hindus. They're not real gods. And that's what he's saying. Okay. Its most plausible derivation is from al, not. Oh, excuse me. And hence would suggest falsity or lack of being, but the term probably also is upon an el, God, using a diminutive and pejorative form that could mean something like godlet. Okay, I won't even delve into that. If you understood, you understood. It's an interesting point. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? Am I okay? Yes, it's called coughing. I'm fine. It's something just went down the wrong pipe. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? If not, then let's go on. Verse 5. When you bring fellowship offerings, we learned about fellowship offerings in Leviticus chapter, I'm going to go with chapter 3, if I remember correctly. So Leviticus chapter 3, and remember we said there were different modes of fellowship offerings. Okay? Or thanks offerings. No, I'm sorry. I'm getting two things mixed up. That is wait a second. Yes, fellowship offerings. There were different modes of fellowship offerings, such as the thank you offering, the voluntary offering, etc. So remember, our 5 basic types of offerings are the olah, the fully burnt offering. This is just review for our studies at the beginning of Leviticus. The olah, the mincha, the grain offering, the shlamim, the fellowship or peace offerings, the chatat, the sin or recompense from inadvertent transgression offering, and the asham, the guilt offering. Okay, so this is the shlamim, this is the fellowship offering. And then we learn later on, is it Leviticus chapter 4? I can't remember now exactly. No, I think it's 7, if I remember correctly. Where was it? No, 7 is good. Right. Okay, so this goes back to the fellowship offering in 7. So there's the todah, the thank offering. There's the the vow, the free will offering. So these are different modes of the fellowship offering. Okay, so here we're talking about that we saw in Leviticus chapter 3 and explained further in 7. So these fellowship offerings to YaHWeH le'ritzonchem tizbechuhu. So you may offer them of your own free will as you please. That's the idea. They're not required. They are basically, they're voluntary offerings that express either thank you to God or hey, I'm just in a good mood and I just want to remember you kind of thing, or as fulfillment of a vow. Okay, if you get me out of this mess, then I will bring 3 sheep and 2 cows and 2 oxen to sacrifice. So they're voluntary. They're not required. They're contextually voluntary. They're voluntary. So le'ritzonchem tizbechuhu. Let's see how Robert Alter translates that, because that could be understood in a number of different ways. Let's see how Robert Alter deals with that one. Okay, and when you sacrifice communion sacrifice to the Lord, you should sacrifice it so that it will be acceptable for you. So that's another possible way to so they translate it. The NIV, I think, understands that differently. Let me just bring up the NIV for a second here on Leviticus 19. The NIV does translate this way, but let me see if anyone interlinear. Is it parallel? Parallel? Yeah. So this is Leviticus 19. Just give me a second. I'll make the point that I want to make. Leviticus 19:5. So the King James Bible. Let's go with the New King James Bible. So here there are two possible different interpretations of this. So the most common way is that you shall offer it in a way that it will be accepted on your behalf, or you shall offer it of your own free will. But the majority seems to say that it will be accepted. And that's probably correct, because that's a phrase that's used, that it's le'ritzonchem, this idea of it being wanted or desired or acceptable to YaHWeH is a phrase that's used regarding sacrifices elsewhere. So I would imagine that that's correct. That's the way Robert Alter also translates it, and he's usually pretty good, right? So that will be acceptable for you. So we'll go with that. So not as you wish or whenever you wish, but so that it will be done in such a way that it is accepted by God. Okay. And what does that mean? Well, verse 6. Biyom ziv hachem yachel, on the day that you slaughter it, you shall eat it. Mimacharat, and the following day, v'notar ad yom ashlishi ba'esh yisaref. So when you bring a fellowship offering, a communion, a peace offering, on the day you slaughter it, you can eat it, or on the following day. But anything left over to the third day, right? So if I slaughter it on a Monday afternoon, then I can eat it Monday. I can eat it all day Tuesday, but once the sun rises on Wednesday morning, and that's it. So anything that's left over until that third day, that exists on the third day, inclusive of its day of slaughter, is to be burnt in fire. Okay, and we saw this earlier. I'm not gonna dig it up right now or chase it down right now, but I guess it's probably, well, let's do that. Let's see for a second. Maybe in, I'm not sure where it is. Maybe in Leviticus 3. One second. I don't remember where it is right now. Okay. But the point is that this is not the first time we've seen this commandment. I don't remember if it was speaking specifically about the peace offering. It might have been speaking about another type of offering. But at any rate, all of these commandments we've pretty much seen before. All the ones that we've seen so far: honor your mother and your father, keep the Shabbat, don't make idols or worship false gods, don't leave a sacrifice over to the third day. So if this is indeed the Holiness Code, right? Remember, this is supposed to be some block of code that is set apart. Well, see, that doesn't make sense now, does it? Right? Because we see all of these laws in other places. The first three that we saw right here, we saw in Exodus chapter 20 in the 10 Commandments. That's not considered part of the Holiness Code. This we saw elsewhere. I don't remember exactly where. So that's not part of the Holiness Code. So this idea that the Holiness Code is some kind of separate book or separate text that either came before or after the supposed peace source, the priestly source. Again, we're talking documentary hypothesis, and I'll point out once again that This is not what I believe at all, but I'm just pointing it out. Actually, I'm refuting it. It doesn't make sense because we see these laws in parts of the 5 books of Moses, parts of the Torah that are not considered part of the Holiness Code. So this is a refutation of the idea of the Holiness Code. If it were really a separate text, we would expect that it would be completely separate laws that don't appear anywhere else in the Torah, but they're not. Okay, let's see. Does Robert Alter have anything to say about that? Verse 6. Okay. When you sacrifice, it is characteristics of the sacerdotal milieu that produce this paraphrase of the Decalogue, that a sacrificial law is intertwined with the fundamental moral and theological imperatives. The Lord's holiness is profaned no less by eating sacrificial meat on the 3rd day than by dishonoring one's parents or turning one's daughters into a whore. Well, we haven't gotten to that one yet. We'll get to that in a second. Sacrifice it. The Hebrew thus switches to a distributive it after the plural sacrifices. What is he saying there? Let me just see. 5. Sacrifices. One second, please. Okay, I don't see his point there. Actually, I disagree with him, but maybe I'm missing something. Okay, at any rate, verse 7. V'im. Wa'im. He achol. YaHWeH bayom hashalishi. Pigul hu lo ye'raseh. So if it is in any way, we have repetition here, and as I say, pretty much every Torah study, repetition means emphasis. So literally it says v'im he achol ye'achel. If it is eaten, eaten. If it is eaten, if it is eaten. So we can translate it if it is at all or in any way eaten bayom shlishi, on the 3rd day, semicolon. We have the etnach here, that little wishbone thingy, the atnach. Pigulhu. It is disgrace, or let's see how they translate pigul. Abomination. Let's see how the BDB translates that, and let's see how Robert Alter. Foul thing, refuse. That's the Strong's often picks up on the BDB. Foul thing or refuse, but only as a technical term of unclean sacrificial flesh. If it is eaten on the 3rd day, Leviticus 7:18. So that's where probably our Leviticus 19:7, etc. So that's probably where our rule for the 3rd day is. That's Leviticus 7:18. Check that out very quickly. Here. This is Leviticus 7:18. So this is what we saw in Leviticus 19, referring, it's a repetition of this, or rephrasing of this commandment here in Leviticus 7. If any meat of the fellowship offering is eaten on the 3rd day, the one who offered it will not be accepted. It will not be reckoned to their credit, for it has become impure. The person who eats any of it will be held responsible. So you don't eat rotten meat. You don't eat rotten sacrificial meat, is the idea. You have to have respect for the sacrifices because they are kadosh. A lot of times they're called kadosh kadoshim, holy of holies. Again, the repetition meaning emphasis, like really holy or super holy, kadosh kadoshim. So because it's holy, it's set aside. It's not just regular meat. It's not a White Castle, hamburger that you're buying for, I don't even know how much they are anymore, probably $10 for a hamburger now. It's set aside. It's kadosh. It's set aside. It is dedicated to YaHWeH, to God. Okay, so if you eat it on the third day, then it is, what do we say? How did the BDB translate that? A foul thing. It is refuse. I like a foul thing. Okay, it is a foul thing. Okay, lo yiratzeh. It will not be accepted by God. In other words, all that work that you did, bringing the animal, laying your hands on it, slaughtering it, then having it cut up, the parts that are given to the Kohanim, the priests given to the priests, the parts that you're supposed to eat, you eat. All of that is for nothing, because if you let any of it sit around into the third day, and now you've taken this holy, this kadosh kadoshim, this very holy offering, and you let it rot, and then you're eating rotten, or you haven't burned it in fire, so you're letting this sacrifice that's set aside, that's dedicated to YaHWeH, that's dedicated to God, you're letting it become rancid, then the whole thing is canceled. Okay. Reminds me of a story. White Castle equals murder burgers. Jeez. Reminds me of a story of when I was in college, and talking about strict teachers. This one was a little bit too strict. Her name was, she was German. I still remember her name. I wonder if she's around. Whatever happened to that lady? Ilse Ibsen. That was her name. Ilse Ibsen. Huh. Now she's a distinguished professor of mathematics at North Carolina State University. Okay. Interesting. Anywho, so she was my computer science teacher, German, as you can tell by the name. And she had a policy, a very strict policy. Each week, problem sets, homework assignments, and they were very, very long, difficult homework assignments. I mean, we would spend hours and hours. I mean, sometimes like maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 hours on her homework assignments. It was an advanced computer science class. And she had a strict rule, which if you handed it in late, then you get a 0 on that homework assignment. Okay, well, I think that was junior year. And I'd had enough. I just couldn't hit the books anymore. I was tired. I'd hit the books for years and years and years in junior high school. And so by that point, I'd pretty much had enough. And she didn't collect, I think it was the first 7 homework assignments, because she couldn't find a teaching assistant for that class, I remember. And so she said, hold on to the homework assignments. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Submit the homework assignments, but I won't have them graded and given back to you until I have a teaching assistant who can grade them, who can check them and grade them. So each of those first 7 homework assignments, I submitted late. Sometimes it was literally just a couple minutes late. You had to put them in her mailbox. This was before internet. This was the late 80s, actually. This is before internet. You had to put it in her mailbox by a certain time, and she would come and collect them. I think it was, I don't know, whatever it was, right? Let's say 8 a.m. Tuesday. And she would come collect them at exactly 8 a.m. Tuesday. And if it wasn't there, it was considered late. And so my first 7 homework assignments, I submitted late. I think some of them were literally maybe 10 minutes late. Maybe a couple were a day or two late. I honestly don't remember. Okay. I said to myself, listen, what's the worst that can happen? Okay. Is she really going to just completely reject them? I worked like 10 to 20 hours on each one of these homework assignments. And, okay, she'll take off 5 points. She'll take off 10 points, whatever. She'll penalize me. She'll take points off my final grade. I have no idea. Okay. So finally she got her teaching assistant, and he marked all of the first 7 assignments, and she gave them all back. Okay. And I'd spent, let's say an average of 15 hours, 15 times 77 is 105. So I'd spent 105 hours approximately on these homework assignments. She handed them all back, and one after one came back to me. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. I got 7 zeros. I kid you not. Okay. This lady was nuts. All right. German, a real stickler. She stuck to it 100%. If you handed it in even a minute late, you got a 0 on that assignment. And I was so pissed off. I was so upset and shocked, actually, that I remember I went to there's something called the dean of the residential college where I was. I went to the dean. I tried to make a big stink about it, and in the end, nothing, because the college said that we don't. Each professor is allowed to set their own policy, and that's just the way it is. There's nothing we can or will do about it. So that was it. I got the 7 zeros on the first 7 homework assignments, and I realized that I'm gonna have a lot of trouble passing this class, and I withdrew from the class. It was the only class in all of my 4 undergraduate years that I withdrew from. A withdraw is basically, it appears on your transcript as a W, and it means like, okay, this person bailed out of the class because he probably thought he was going to fail it or something like that. It's not an F. It doesn't count against your grade point average at all. It's not calculated in your grade point average, but it appears on your transcript, and it basically says like, okay, I know I was about to fail, so I dropped out of the class, which was indeed the case. What's the point? The homework assignment was not yiratzeh, it was not desirable, it was not acceptable or accepted after that deadline. And how did I know that Ilse Ipsen, the distinguished professor of mathematics, would be as strict as God himself? But he was, but she was. I did not like her very much. Anywho, so right, that's the idea that after a certain time, it just becomes unacceptable. It's not accepted, and it's considered an abomination. It's considered a foul thing to keep this holy sacrifice, this very holy sacrifice, sitting around to the point where it can become rancid, to the point where it can rot. And 3 days is a reasonable amount of time in the Middle Eastern sun, even if it's wintertime, right? Remember, there was no refrigeration back then, etc. You get the idea. Okay. Does Robert Alter have anything to say about that? No. We'll go a little while longer. Let's see. Do I want to go to the synagogue? I might go to the synagogue for the prayer service. I'm probably going to miss it, so I probably won't, I think. No biggie. Okay. Verse 8. V'ochlau avono. I'm sorry. V'ochlau avono Isa ki et chodesh YaHWeH Hillel unichrata hanefesh ahi me ameha. So this is a very, very serious crime. This is a very serious thing if you eat a sacrifice after it's become rancid on the 3rd day. So those who eat it, anyone who eats it, avono Isa, he shall bear his sin. And this phrase usually means that it now becomes between you and God. He'll decide what to do based on the individual circumstance, but then it does go on. And you don't really see this that often in the Torah, where it says specifically what will happen to you. Ki et kodesh YaHWeH Hillel, because he profaned. He made, and we'll talk about what that means in a second, but he profaned the holy thing, that which is holy to YaHWeH. Kodesh YaHWeH Hillel, he profaned. Now remember, we said that the word profaned, Hillel, doesn't mean, did I say profane? Profane. It doesn't mean profane as in, like smut or anything like that. Profane just means to make into a common thing. Okay, the underlying root here is hal, lamed, which means just a common everyday thing. In fact, in modern Hebrew, not only in modern Hebrew, but I don't think it's biblical Hebrew, but in Mishnaic or maybe Talmudic Hebrew, I don't know where it entered. Okay. One second here. Sword, pierced, pollute, defile, profane. One second. All right, I'm not going to go through all this right now, but in Hebrew, so the days of the week, the days Sunday through Friday, are called Yemei Chol, just the common days. from this root, from the same root as chilel. Okay, and so kodesh and chol, kodesh and kuf daled shin and chilel het lamed are the opposite of each other. One means special, and one just means ordinary. So you took the special thing of YaHWeH, the thing that was set aside for YaHWeH, and you turned it into a regular thing. You just treated it as a regular thing. This is not a regular thing. This is a sacrifice. This is a peace offering. It's special. It's set aside. You have to treat it with special respect. You can't just treat it like a McDonald's, quarter pounder that you shove it, take in your and throw it in your refrigerator and eat it the next week. Okay. So you've taken something that is kadosh, that is special, that is set aside. Just as we said, the Shabbat is set aside from the other 6 days of the week. The nation of Israel is set aside from the other nations. So this meat, since it's a sacrifice, since it's an offering to YaHWeH, is set aside from just regular meat that you would eat, that you would catch out in the field and eat for dinner. And by letting it sit around until the third day, you have treated it just as regular meat. You haven't treated it as something special. And that's exactly what verse 8 is saying. And if you do that, you will bear your sin, meaning that's now between you and YaHWeH. He's going to take it out of your hide as he sees fit. But after that, that's clarified. The specific punishment is that person shall be cut off from his people, what's called Karaite. And there's a lot of opinions as to what this means. The most basic opinion would be that you are now not considered part of the people of Israel. You are excised. You are excommunicated from the people of Israel. That's how serious it is. So this is considered pretty serious, and this is often reserved for some of the more serious transgressions, some of the more serious crimes. This crime of, or this punishment of karet. Okay. No, I've never heard murder burger. I'm sure you'll explain it to me later. Okay. Any other comments we want to look at here? No. Okay, this finishes this section. I'm deciding whether, let's see, do I want to go to the synagogue? It's already dark out. I think by the time I get there, I'm not going to make it anyway, so forget it. We'll just go on a little bit longer, and then we'll end. We'll go until another half an hour or so. Any questions, any comments? Any questions, any comments? If not, let's go on. Verse 9, beautiful, beautiful law. I love these types of laws, okay? This shows the sensitivity that the Torah, that YaHWeH has towards those who are poor, those who are underprivileged. Verse 9, I'm sorry. Kutz rechem et kapsir artsachem lo techale pa'at sadcha l'chtzor waleket ktsircha lo tilaket. Okay, so let's talk about what this means. When you harvest your harvests, your grain harvests, it's really talking about. So this comes from the underlying word is katsar kuf sadiresh, which means to cut. In fact, the word cut is probably related to the Hebrew word katsar, because you can trace the word cut back to, I believe, the the Latin verb cortare, where you get words like curt. Let's look it up for a second. And in languages like Spanish and Portuguese, to cut is cortar. Okay, Wiktionary. Etymology. So, blah, 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 blah. Let's go back. Old Norse. They're tracing it back to there. That's ridiculous. They're doing the whole Proto-Indo-European thing. So I don't think that's correct. So I'm pretty sure. Let me just look it up for a second here. Sakare sect. Sakare. I don't know. I'm not gonna drag it to chase it down here. But if I'm not mistaken, and I could be mistaken, I'll admit that. I believe that the Latin word cortare. Well, let's see. Cortar. Western Galician, Portuguese, Spanish. Etymology. So cortar is in Portuguese. To cut is cortar. From the Latin curtare, to shorten. Okay, there we go. So it is. Okay, it does go back to that. So once we get back to curtare in Latin, and we could probably even trace that back further. So again, you get here English words like curt, I believe cut, even though they're not admitting it. At any rate, we get back to the Latin curtare, which means to shorten. And that is not too far off from this word katsar. Kurtar, katsar. Again, I can't prove it. It's speculation. But it's very possibly related to this word katsar, or this root, this Hebrew word katsar, kuf sadi resh, katsar, which means short. Katsar, even in modern Hebrew, means short. Not short like as opposed to tall, but short like I don't know. If you have a piece of wood and it's a short piece of wood, you could say it's katsar. Okay. So when you harvest your harvest, what really means when you cut down your cuttings of your harvest. Okay. But when you harvest your harvest, we'll go with of your land. Oh shit. Oh, don't tell me this is now freezing up. No, it's not. Okay, so when you harvest your harvest in your land, do not finish off the corners of your field. So what does that mean? Okay, if you think of a field, it's square. It's generally going to be square. And you leave the corners. You don't harvest the corners. Okay, see if we can even get a picture for that one. I bet we could, since the picture is worth 1,000 words. Don't harvest the corners of your fields. So it would be an example here. I don't know. I don't see a good example here, but you get the idea, right? So you leave the corners of your field. You can think of it as you harvest in a giant circle and you don't touch the four corners of the field. Okay? And the word pe'ah means the corner. We see this in other contexts as well, which we'll get to eventually. Okay? Lo techale pe'at sadcha liktzor. So don't finish off. Don't erase the corners of your field by harvesting them. And we'll go on. Leket kitzircha lo tilaket. Leket is usually translated as the gleanings. So what are the gleanings? Well, I'm not a farmer and I've never been a farmer, so I can't speak from personal experience, but when you go harvest the field, you don't get, if you harvest, let's say, a wheat field, especially in ancient times when they did it by hand, they did it with a sickle or other hand instruments, then you're not going to get all of the standing grain, what's called the kama. The standing grain means like wheat and barley. When they ripen, they'll stand up straight. That's called standing grain in Hebrew, kama, from the word kam, which means to arise or go up, to rise up, to stand up. Okay, so when you harvest the field, you're going to leave some behind. You're not going to get every last stalk of grain. That's called the leket. Leket is the gleanings. It's what's left over after you harvest the fields. It's what Ruth, in the book of Ruth, was told. She was told to follow behind the wheat harvesters, the harvesters of the wheat fields, and collect the leket, collect the leftovers. It's basically the leftovers. Okay? Let me close some of these up. So let's see. Gleaning. What is or what may be gleaned. Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't give us a lot of information. So the leket is what's left over when you harvest the wheat field. See if we can get a picture of that. I don't know. We can try. The principle of gleaning. There's Ruth doing her gleaning, picking up the gleanings. I don't know. I don't see a good picture here, but you get the idea, right? Maybe that. I don't know. Should we go with that one? At any rate, it's the leftover grain after you harvest the field. There's going to be some that's just left standing. Separating the wheat from the chaff is something else. Marianana Miknana. That's after they would that is after they would beat the seeds out of the grain, out of the stalks. They would take the sheaves. It's really interesting stuff, if I remember correctly. Again, I'd have to go back and if I'm a little bit off, then don't shoot me, please. They would take the sheaves. Sheaves are bundles of standing grain, like wheat stalks. They would bundle them, and then they would take them. They would beat them against the ground, and that would make the seeds come out. But it would also make a whole lot of other junk come out. And then they would take these winnowing forks. That was called winnowing, and they would take all of the stuff and throw it up into the air, into the wind on a windy day, and the chaff would fly away with the wind, and the grains, the seeds would fall back down to the ground. That was separating the wheat from the chaff. The wheat seeds would fall back to the ground, and the chaff, the leftover, all the other junk, the seed coverings and whatever, little pieces of leaves and God knows what, that would fly off in the wind. That was called winnowing. If you look into ancient agricultural methods, it's really fascinating stuff. There are actually places in Israel where they demonstrate this. Maybe once we set up a World Alliance of Qara'im community, we can go visit one of them. So, but the gleanings are, we're going to go for about another 15 minutes in the end, are what's left over after you harvest the fields. It's what's the grains that you might have not, you wouldn't have gotten all the grains. You wouldn't have picked all the grains. You would have left some behind, some of the standing stalks. That is the leket. Okay? So do not glean, do not go back and do not glean the gleanings of your harvest. Meaning, you go through the field once, whatever's left behind, you don't go back and pick off every little bit. So you leave the corners of your fields, you leave the gleanings. Why? Who are you leaving it for? We'll find out in a second. Verse 10. Let's see Robert Alter. Well, let's continue and then we'll see what Robert Alter says. So your vineyards, you shall not, olel is also to glean. But here we're talking about getting all the grapes. Okay, so there might be some grapes that you leave behind. So this I'm going to need a little help on because this is getting technical with grapes. Let's see. We can get a little commentary on that. Okay. So Robert Alter translates this, first of all, as verse 9. And when you reap the land's harvest, you shall not finish off the edge of your field, nor pick up the gleanings of your harvest. And your vineyard, and your vineyard you shall not pluck bare, nor pick up the fallen fruit of your vineyard. So that's how he distinguishes here. So the teolel is to pluck bare. And I'm curious what the underlying root is here. I know the phrase, but alal. Okay, like letalel, like severely. Is he devote himself in verb, denominative, glean? Okay. All right. Well, we'll go with Robert Alter's translation. So you don't pluck you don't pick off every last grape. There's a couple of grapes here and there, you leave them. And anything that falls on the floor, you also leave it. Okay. Well. And he has a comment on that. Verse 10. Or in verse 9. Okay, let's finish off and then we'll read verse 9 and 10. And I think we're going to stop for today. So I can close this out. Le'ani u lager azov otam. So why do you not do these things, or why do you do these things? Leave the corners of your field. Don't pick up the gleanings of the grain harvests. Don't take off every last bundle of grapes, and don't pick up grapes off the floor. Le'ani u lager azov otam. You leave them for the poor person, the pauper, and for the ger, for the sojourner, the convert, what we would call today the convert, the person who comes from a foreign nation to live among Israel, because these are underprivileged. These are people who need extra help. The poor person, because for obvious reasons, the ger, because he doesn't have a family, he doesn't have a clan, he doesn't have a land inheritance in the land of Israel. The ger, it's like, listen, anyone who's moved to a different country or even a different state where they don't have any family or friends knows exactly what the Torah is talking about here. Okay, I've lived in a number of different countries in my life, mostly the United States, Israel, Portugal, a little bit in Morocco, and I've traveled around a bunch, and I know that feeling of coming to a different country where you don't have any roots, you don't have any connections, you don't have any network, and what a disadvantaged state you're in, a frightening state, right? You don't feel you have a support network. That's what the ger, that's the situation that the ger is in when he leaves his people to come live among Israel because he feels some affinity to the nation of Israel. So the ger is a protected class in the Torah, along with the orphan, the widow, the poor person, the ger. Okay? So you leave him for the poor person and the ger. Ani YaHWeH Elohechem. And then we have this summary phrase again that we see is typical of the Holiness Code. I am YaHWeH, your God. And again, as Robert Alter pointed out, the implication is I am YaHWeH, your God, who is holy, and therefore you be holy. It's the holiness, quote unquote, the Holiness Code. Okay? I think this is a good place to stop. And I'll just make a mark for myself that we got up to 1910. I will read the Robert Alter commentaries. Let me just make a mark for myself. So I'll have it next week. And let's read Robert Alter's comments on this, and then we can sum up. Okay? So you shall not finish off the edge of your field, nor pick the gleanings of your harvest. In an agricultural economy without coined money, weights of silver and gold could be used for exchange. The stipulation that an edge of the field be left unharvested and that what was dropped by the reapers should not be picked up amounted to a kind of poor tax. Okay. The indigent could follow the harvesters into the field and pick up enough to sustain themselves, as we see dramatically in the book of Ruth, when the widowed Ruth, a newly arrived resident alien, goes out into Boaz's fields. All right, we mentioned that. If you haven't read the book of Ruth, you should. It's short and it's very moving, very, very moving, very moving book. Sojourner, as elsewhere, the Hebrew term refers to a resident alien who in this tribal agrarian society would have been without real property. Right? So we mentioned that. Okay. That's it. Any questions, any comments before we sum up, or before we end? Any questions, any comments? If not, then we're going to end here. I thank you all for joining me for this study. This has been Leviticus chapter 19, part 1. We ended up doing Leviticus chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. And this is the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study, weekly Shabbat Torah study. We'll continue in Leviticus next week. This has been Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, broadcasting to you from Katzrin in the Golan Heights in Israel. And wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov wherever you are in the world. Hope you enjoyed the study. Hope you got a lot out of it. And wishing you all a wonderful Shabbat and a wonderful week. And be'ezrat YaHWeH, we will see you again next week. We'll go out with some music.
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אני תן למות רגליך, על ינום שומרך. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי